Hello and welcome back to OT the podcast. We're here to talk about watches, time, and how to spend it. My name is Philip.
And my name is Andy Green, and Felix. We have a very big guest joining us today.
VIP?
VIP, yeah, certified blue tick, the lot.
Really? Wow, cool.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Who we got? What are we talking?
We have Cara from Hodinkee, the one,
Cara
the only.
Barrett.
Cara Barrett, causing some really big positive, I should say, waves of late.
Yeah. Starting fires and putting them out at the same time.
Oh, the hero we needed in 2021. So, Felix, I think you can lead the chat here, but we were always planning on having Cara on. We sort of reached out, and then she released a really interesting article, sort of the eve of our scheduled recording.
Yeah. Well, which the timing worked out. We were trying to find a date for a while, and in the end, it worked out great because she wrote her widely discussed inaugural column on sort of the status of women in the watch industry, and it gave us something to talk about, and talk about it we did.
Yeah, and so I sort of pivoted this conversation that we had with Cara. We still get a lot of watch chat in there, and sort of dive pretty deep into her special projects role at Hodinkee.
She didn't
You
give
did
everything
an
away.
Instagram
She didn't
story.
tell us all the we asked her off the recording, like, so what are you releasing this year? And she was like, no, just stone cold.
Yeah, I know. I said, well, this isn't going out for maybe 2 weeks. Can you tell us? Cara says no. And Stern said,
We also talk about
can keep a secret.
We also chat about the her sort of role, which turns out has recently changed a little bit in relation to the comments and community section of Hodinkee, which is something that is the wild west of the watch internet, I think.
Yeah, never read the comments. Never, ever read the comments. Well, Felix, let's take a quick break and we'll hear from our sponsor, Tag Hoya, and then we will
get into it.
Give Cara a call.
It's a long one. It's a good one. Don't miss it.
Yeah, buckle up.
This week's episode is brought to you by Tag Hoya, who have launched a new partnership with Porsche. And today we're going to have a chat about why people who like cars are also people who like watches. Let's get into it, Andy.
Yeah, it's a really interesting relationship between sort of those watch collectors and car enthusiasts. There was a lot of things that they have in common, and a lot of things that maybe they don't. There's sure, we'll say it up front. There are a lot of people that might love watches and hate cars, viewed as a tool from A to B. A lot of people that love cars that don't really understand watches, but I think it's an interesting discussion to have anyway, because that overlap, you put the two circles together into a Venn diagram, is what we're going to dive into. The first thing I want to kind of touch on is maybe the reason why people that like watches like cars. And I think what's been really influential over the last 50, 60 years, and it's something we talked about in a previous sort of episode, is the relationship between celebrities in film sort of depicting automotive race car drivers and in real life. So if someone like Steve McQueen, who famously wore the Monaco in the Hoya Monaco in Le Mans, or someone like Paul Newman, who very famously wore his Rolexes in real life when he was actually racing. So there's some really influential sort of celebrities to probably blame for this shared love, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I'm sort of thinking back to looking at your photos from when you like go to car sort of meets, and it's often like a mix of like vintage Porsche, vintage car, vintage Rolex, vintage Hoya, all these sort of it seems like a shared love of mechanical things, and timing plays a role in certainly motorsports and automotive world. So yeah, I can see that there's some natural fit there.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing when you talk about motorsports being a timing instrument, on the dash of the car or outside of the dash, actually timing the races, and of course, very famously, winners receiving watches as prizes has been a big thing. And if you talk about Hoya, go back to some of those early racetrack days where Jack Hoya was sort of working out deals with various races here and there, and there's some really cool history there as well. So it's sort of infiltrated, in the early '60s and certainly in the '70s. And I think going to that point, like there was a time, and it's still relevant now, but there was a time where if you're a race car driver, you were a really, really big deal. Like, you were the
Oh,
rock
yeah.
stars
Yeah,
of
yeah,
your
yeah, yeah,
time,
yeah.
and the watch that you were wearing was huge,
Yeah.
and
And also, the watch that you were wearing had a function, and it was,
mm,
like, that's the there's no sort of I don't think it's a coincidence that so many people these days love, like, tool watches, like, they're functional
yeah,
things, and they came from, this sort of pre-electronic era of the golden age of motorsports when they had a purpose and they were made for that, and in the same way, the cars also expressed that, you know, functionalism. Like, this
mm.
was, that time of, like, new technologies, like, you're talking about Porsche, and they're, like, revolutionizing, like, automatic transmissions and stuff like that. It's pretty exciting if you're into, innovation and design, I can see,
100%. And you kind of mentioned Joe Siffert the other week and how he was sort of one of the first race car drivers, or the first race car driver to sort of cut a non, automotive brand deal in the F1. And you look at it now, collaborations are a massive part of, certainly Formula One, but race car driving.
Mm,
Nearly every watch brand has an ambassador who's a race car driver, and the really big
sponsors a
brands,
race or
yeah, like Tag Heuer are the timing keepers,
mm,
or they sponsor a whole team, which is amazing.
Formula E, the Porsche
Formula
Formula E
E.
T is, yep.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing is that, there's this commonality between watches and cars, is that there's no limits really to the hobby. Either hobby, cars, you can go infinitely high. Watches, we've seen, you can go infinitely high, but also the price of entry can be pretty reasonable. Like, you can spend $50 on a, on a watch, and, you can get a car for
A bit
500
more,
bucks if you
yeah.
really wanted. But the entry price can be quite low, and there's that shared appreciation. Like, you don't have to love high end cars, or the brand new GT3 Porsche. You can, maybe you can get a 50-year-old Porsche, or a 20-year-old, 996 or something like
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
and still appreciate it just as much. And even if you think about, an entry level watch, or an entry into the watch world, the entry to the car world can be, relatively the same. And
yeah,
you said it before, but throughout, throughout sort of, motorsport, there's meetups, there's those community vibes, there's
mm.
get-togethers. It's the same thing, and I think I love going to these car meetups, because you meet people, you find interesting cars, but yeah, you certainly spot some interesting watches, and I think that's something that watch guys and girls and car guys and girls overlap with as well. Like, it becomes down to the people.
Yeah, and I think I think it's something that everyone can drive a car to get somewhere. Everyone
Yeah,
can wear a watch to, make sure they're on time to their meeting. But but you can also, so it's a universal appeal or has a universal thing, but you can take it a little bit further, and you can find those special pieces, or, be it an automotive, a car or car paraphernalia or a watch, or you can take it even, you can meet that community, you can meet friends, and, make a podcast out of it, Andy.
exactly, exactly, and that's not to mention sort of the mechanics and engineering that goes into both watches and cars, and getting, tweaking things and customizing things. You can do it to both of those things. You've just talked about it. The passion is certainly there for both. There are elements of investments in cars and in watches. It's something you can't ignore. The other thing I really like to think about is that sort of collecting journey phase or cycle that people sort of have when they get into cars, or they get into watches, and it sort of starts. Everyone sort of follows that same sort of cycle of, starting here, then going to this thing, and then upgrading this, and then selling these two that they had to get something else, and then
Mm,
selling it all and starting again. And you see that through watches as well. Like, it's sort of, these are both hobbies that are really journeys. They're not sort of, I finished now, because no matter
mm.
if you're into cars, if you're into watches, you're never finished. It's an ever evolving and ever changing sort of journey, where you just keep, get going along.
Andy, they can also have some logistical challenges, these sort of
Mm.
interests. Talk to me about this.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's obviously a lot of differences as well. There's advantages, there's disadvantages. There's, if you're talking about cars, there's storage, there's insurance, registration, fuel and servicing. And my theory, and this is my personal theory, is that there's a lot of car people that start off really not interested in watches, and then they kind of get to a point where my garage is only so big. I still have that passion for mechanical things and meetups,
Mm,
and a hobby that I can kind of pour more money into, and they turn to watches, and it becomes car lovers evolving into watch lovers.
Well, that's sort of the old story about places like Hong Kong and New York having such a rich
Yeah,
watch culture because the car culture is so hard. Like, there's not enough space.
there's not enough space. And the other really interesting thing to kind of put a pin in this on is there's a huge difference between the big difference, sorry, between people and watch people, how they view vintage watches and cars.
Oh
So a
yeah, what's that?
vintage car, you know, they're much less particular around the condition and whether things have been restored. When you're talking about vintage watches, you want it to be all original, uh, not refurbished, not restored. Whereas if it's a car, as long as it's sort of got, the original chassis and some,
The engine
maybe
number
the
or
original
whatever.
paint,
Yeah.
like it's still really, really desirable. And I guess that's because one, you'll take you out on the road. It's probably been crashed a bunch in its life. It's probably had a lot of Bondo. It's probably been repainted 3 different times and, whatever. And I think that that's a really interesting thing. But, you know what? Either way, essentially they're both collectible works of functional art. And, they provide a basic function. If it's a car, getting from A to B, or if it's a watch, it's telling the time.
Mm.
But they can be so much more than that.
They could almost be wearable art, Andy.
Yeah.
And speaking of wearable art, I'd just like to have another little quick look at the Tag Heuer Carrera Porsche Chronograph Special Edition.
Hmm.
We've talked about it before. We've talked about it over the last few weeks. It's a 44 millimeter Carrera steel case, H-link bracelet, or my favorite, the Porsche-inspired leather strap. The dial, of course, we've spoken about before. It's asphalt grey, super textured, nice contrast with the greys and the reds, those Porsche colours, ceramic bezel, and that Hoya O2 movement with 80 hours of power reserve. The rotor at the end is shaped like the Porsche steering wheel. I think this is a really nice tribute of where those two interests in watches and cars come together.
Yeah, so in terms of pricing, the Tag Heuer Carrera Porsche Chronograph Special Edition is 8,450 Australian dollars on leather. If you go the steel bracelet, that's 8,750 Aussie dollars. Now it's not a limited edition, but it does come in this really cool special co-branded packaging.
To discover more about the partnership between Tag Heuer and Porsche, as well as the new Tag Heuer Carrera Porsche Chronograph Special Edition, head to tagheuer.com/Porsche or your local boutique. Let's get back to that episode.
Fantastic.
Andy, we are back. I don't want to waste any more time. Let's just get into it. Let's get Cara on.
I'll hit speed dial now.
Well, Felix, our guest today really needs no introduction, but we're going to give her one anyway. Cara Barrett first found the world of watches in 2012, where she worked at Sotheby's watch department, having front row seat at the second auction of the Graves Super Complication and Titanium collection. In 2015, she joined Hodinkee as an editor. You might have read about her in Town and Country or the New York Times. Today, she has a triple barrel job, at least triple barreled, and is the manager of sort of social media and, more importantly, special projects / editor. Welcome to OT the podcast, Cara Barrett.
Thanks for having me. That was quite an introduction. I feel so thrilled to be here and chat with you guys. And I actually have some news. I am no longer our social media manager. We hired someone new for that.
Knew it. I said that to Felix before he put that in there. I said that to
I'm
him.
so excited. No, it's a week old.
I bet you are.
It's a week old. Well, as much as I love social media for myself, it's a lot. It's a full-time job. It's like a lot to do for a company in addition to the other things. And we hired someone really great. Her name's Daisy. Dials for Days. I just posted her on my Instagram stories.
Yeah,
So
just
follow
followed her
her if you
literally
can.
minutes ago.
There you go. But yes, so I only have two jobs now
Double
as
barreled.
one.
Congrats.
Much as with hunting guns, two barrels is traditional. So with 2020 job titles.
I'm just here for it. It's great. So thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, well, we're very excited to have you. But before we dive into the rich and diverse topics of what you've been up to, who are you and what do you do? Just a nice
Okay,
open
this is
ended
a
to
loaded
start.
question.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's super easy, but also delicate, I guess. No, so my name's Cara, as you announced. I am 34 years old. I'm thrilled to reveal my age. Age is just
Nice.
a number. And I live in New York. I work for Hodinkee. I write for the site. I manage all of our partnerships, including our limited editions. So I see those from start to finish, from design to execution to launch.
Interesting.
My favorite part of it are the launches themselves. I must
Okay.
admit, I love a good watch, but I love a good launch even more. The rush is unreal. And yeah, so I kind of wear lots of different hats at the company, and I've been at Hodinkee for about 6 years now. I can't believe it. I was the
So you're like
fourth
a veteran.
employee, and now I am a veteran. I'm an OG, as we say,
Hmm.
along with the likes of Ashley and Ben, obviously, and Steven and Will and Jack. I just love the watch industry. I have to admit, it's weird and cool and nerdy and niche, and the people are really great, despite some people
Being
not being so great, but the majority of people are great. And yeah, it's just been really fun. I feel really, really lucky to have the career path that I've had, and to really love what I do. So
Did you
that's a loaded answer to your
no,
loaded
no, that's a very
question.
good one of those sort of questions that I ask anyone sort of, that you come across in this weird world of watches is, could you justify what you're doing now to like your career counselor? I don't actually know if you have career counselors in America. Is that something that like at the end of high school you'd see someone and
Do
they'd
we have them here?
I did. I had like a class that said, "What do you want
So
to do with your
I
life?"
so I didn't have like a career counselor. So there was like a college counselor in high
Maybe.
school, and they were like, "This is where you should go to college." I went to the like opposite place of where they told me to go,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
then went. So I ended up going to Southern Methodist University, all the way in Dallas, Texas. Which, shout out to Texas right now. I feel really bad
Mm.
for what's going on over there. It's really it's very insane. And as someone who used to live there, it never snows, so I really can't imagine what that's like. But I went to SMU and I studied first engineering and art combined. Realized that it was not for me after I failed calculus 2. I was like, this is gonna be a little more tricky than I thought.
Sure, sure.
So then I pivoted to art history, and they just told me, my professor was like, well, you can work at a gallery or an auction house. Those are your options.
Yeah, he's
And I
not
was
wrong.
like, oh, okay, helpful. Yeah. So I worked at an auction house because that was like a natural next step. I was like, all right, that sounds cool. Um, Also
Ne
really lucky that I was able to get a job there, because those are tricky to get. I got
Mm.
there, I was like, wow, like this is like this is like Vogue, it's kind of like Devil Wears Prada, but like in the
Yeah,
art
yeah,
world.
yeah, with
Um,
more, nerd glasses.
yeah, exactly. And so you just every day you're like doing really terrible stuff, and you're like, wow, I'm so thankful for this job.
Amazing,
And
amazing.
they're like, if you leave, we have like 100 people behind you, and you're like, okay, great. So I did that, and then fell into watches there, and then now
Here
I'm
we
at
are.
Hodinkee. So no, short answer is no. I don't think a career counselor would have ever told me that I could work in watches. I didn't know you could work in watches until I was working at Sotheby's. Um,
Absolutely. I
so
mean, and shout out to John Reardon, who we've just published an episode on today. So he's another Sotheby's alum. Um,
yeah, lots of us.
but that's not the question I was going to ask when I asked it a few minutes ago. The question I was going to ask, I was going to do a really smooth pivot to a little column you wrote a little while back now on women's watches and why they should be unisex. The reaction to that was somewhat, I don't know, surprising, disproportionate, wild, pick your
Wild.
word. Did you expect to get that sort of reaction?
So I have a question. How did you view the reaction? Because I actually found it quite positive.
Um, I was unsurprised by. I think there's always a 2% of the loudest voices in the room that are
Mm.
typically the most negative voices in the room. That unsurprised me, but I think there was a lot of really positive discussion to come out of it from people that aren't necessarily because it's not my website, I'll say it, the peanut gallery of your comment section. Yeah, so I think
Mm.
the broader internet had a really positive reaction. Your comment section got a little bit nuts.
Yeah. So I'm a glass half full kind of gal. So I was so first of all, I was so nervous to publish that article, and we have a new head of content, Nick Marino, who joined us, I guess, a month or two ago, and he's
Mhm.
been such a good mentor for me and for the rest of the team, and he really kind of is pushing us to kind of create different stories and different narratives and really kind of put ourselves out there. So he was really instrumental in getting me to find my voice, so to speak.
Hmm.
Because these thoughts I've had are not new. I mean, it's something I've always thought about. It's something I've always talked about, just never really publicly. Because I never set out to ruffle any feathers, but I always end up doing it. I don't know how that happens, but I,
I think we'll get to that.
I say what I think, and I guess sometimes people don't like that, which is fine. Um, but yeah, so I for me, I was just happy that people were commenting, which I knew they would, but I guess I was surprised by the amount of comments it received.
Mm.
And B, were willing to talk about it and think about it. Like there was one of my preferred comments was someone who wrote, and it was I don't agree with what he said, or what they said, but he said he was like, I read it on Tuesday and I've been thinking about it all week, and I came back to here to say, like, you know, I see what you're trying, I see your point, but I still think that there's merit and value in, like, men's and women's watches. And even though, like, I don't agree, I'm just really grateful that someone spent the time to think about that for a week, because that was kind of the whole point, right?
Yeah,
It
that's
was like
cool.
trying to get people to talk about it. So I was thrilled with how it was received. And also I've noticed, I'm not the first. I'm not the first woman in watches. I'm not going to be the last. There are so many other women who are in this industry and in this hobby that are so instrumental and vocal, and have really amazing content and love watches. And it's no, it's not lost on me that they are talking about the same thing and have been talking about the same thing for a while. So I'm just glad that I was able to join them and put this out on a platform like
Absolutely.
Hodinkee. So
The question you mentioned it when you were saying you've been thinking about writing this watch and the supported within your team to write this story. Why now? What sort of changed either in the environment or in you or your or the industry to finally sort of pen the minor magnum opus on women in the watch industry?
I think there are a lot of elements that contributed. I think one is more personal in the sense that I think it's taken me until recent recently, maybe like the past year or so, to really gain confidence in my position within the industry, my position at Hodinkee, my position in my life. Like I just feel very kind of just confident in my opinions and my thoughts and like what I think. And I think that that had something to do with it. I think having Nick Marino join and really push the whole team, not just me, to come up with new story ideas and new concepts and really kind of like nurture all of our creativity, because we have a ton of creative people on the team, but sometimes facilitating that creativity you can hit a lot of roadblocks, especially when you're moving like 100 miles a minute, and trying to just kind of keep up with everything. I also think the past year globally has been there's been such a shift in how people see things and how people approach things, and whether it's race or gender, it people are finally talking about it, and I think it's important to talk about it. And I do want to make a disclaimer, like, this is just watches. It's not
Mm,
something, it's not,
Life and death.
it's not a global issue, right? Like like this is supposed to be fun, and I think that's something that's always kind of weighed on me, in the sense that it should be fun and it should be inviting and it should be inclusive, because they are just watches, and there is a lot of joy in them, and there's a lot of joy in talking about them with other people that love them too. And so I just want everybody to feel that way personally.
Yeah.
So
No, no, and Felix sort of mentioned the article. We'll obviously link it up, but it was sort of a discussion around why you think that women's watches and men's watches should all just be unisex. When I was reading the comments, what came through to me was just people didn't get it. There was, and that's probably what surprised me around the response. You know, there was a lot of positivity, and there were people that just kind of didn't get why it was a problem. So, if you don't mind, would you kind of explain what your angle, in a sense, was, like what you were trying to kind of tell people that maybe didn't understand it completely?
Yeah, I think, I think it's a tough topic to talk about. It's a tough
Mm,
topic to write about. And it's not tough in the sense that it's emotionally difficult. It's just difficult to get your point across because it's a complicated issue.
yeah.
Gender is a complicated issue. It's not black and white. And I think so many people grew up, myself included, until, like 10 years ago, it's like everything was very black and white. And I think that that's a generational thing. Like, I think our parents' generation, it was like this or that, like, that's it. And we're now in a generation where that's not the case. And it's just being kind of open and comfortable with that. And I don't think everybody is quite there. I don't even know if I'm making sense, but I don't know if everybody is quite there, and that's okay. It's just
Mm.
like they're on their own journey and they're trying to figure things out for themselves. But with this story and just kind of making this statement, I think just taking away a label on a watch, it just makes it easier for everybody to identify with it. And like,
Perfect.
and so some of the comments were like, "Oh, well, if you want to watch, just buy it." Well, yeah, I do that. So like, obviously, that doesn't stop me from buying a Submariner because it's, if it's labeled as a men's watch. But it's for people who don't necessarily know about watches or care about watches or really
Or that
understand
are
them. And
stopped by that, right?
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
like,
They're like, "Oh, well, why do I want to watch? Like, I don't like any of these. They're small and have diamonds on them." Like that, you know what I mean? Like, and then they don't get any further than that, or they feel like they're being and I think the marketing is actually a really important topic.
Yeah.
And I wish I had covered this a little bit more.
mhm.
And it's something I touched on when I was talking with Steven earlier in the week, but Jenny L did this really great video on YouTube. I don't know if you guys
Yeah,
watched it, but it was
of course.
about the history of women's watches and the marketing around them. And the biggest point she had that really hit home for me was the fact that, like, there is no advertising for women in watches. Like, even watches for women, that like the marketing and the ads, those are for men. Like, it's all from the male gaze. It's all some supermodel wearing a watch. Like,
Mhm.
I don't relate to that. Like, I don't think any of my friends relate to that. It's kind of weird. And so I think there are a few brands, and I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, so I won't name anything, but I think there are a few brands that do really well, where they show like an empowered woman and like buying her own watch and like that kind of stuff. And I think it's really great, but I think there just needs to be more of that. And kind of just becoming cooler for women in a sense, because right now it's every ad is for men. It's like, hey, buy this watch for you're a woman, is kind of what they're saying, or like buy this watch for yourself. That's it. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest disconnects.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really great answer. And speaking of Jenny L, of course, it's really valuable to have sort of these various opinions and kind of perspectives, because it sort of it opens up the conversation, and it provides that really valuable perspective to one that I can't hold. But you know, on the topic of Jenny L, we actually share the same watch. We own the same watch, the Rolex 36 millimeter Candy Pink
Oh my god,
OP.
I'm so jelly beans. You have no idea. It's so cool. Do you love it?
It, I love it. I got it in October, so a couple of weeks after it sort of was announced and it came out, and I saw it, and I remember talking to Felix, and he was like, "Yeah, the pink's really cool." We didn't get to see them because we were in lockdown, so we were kind of I bought it like completely unseen, didn't try the size on, didn't see any of the dial colors, but I basically got an order in before having actually physically seen the new collection. And I looked at the blue, I looked at the green. I thought the green would be, a bit, obvious because of my last name. And then I just kept coming back to the pink, and I thought, fuck it. I don't care that it's, you can't get it in a 41 like every other color they've released this year. I like the pink. I don't really care. And if anything, the fact that you can't get it in 41 made me want to buy it even more.
Yeah.
And that's probably the first time I've ever I've thought about it the other way around, right? Of like, oh, this watch wasn't, they've done this deliberately to not offer it, in like a larger man size. All of the other colors are available, but the pink, the candy pink, isn't. Now, why would you not make that color in 41? You've just lost yourself a whole bunch of customers, and obviously the demand is through the roof for that watch now.
Yeah. Well, fun fact about the pink and why I think it's the best, besides the fact that I love the color pink, um, is the Stella dials, the
Mm,
original, like the early ones, the vintage ones. The most rare color is a lilac pink.
Nice.
stunning.
Oh, I've got
So
a
I
sorry,
think
Cara,
that's
you
a
go.
good choice. No, go ahead, Felix.
I just want to, you were talking just before about marketing and, how women can sort of be more empowered as consumers of watches and, be offered more visions of themselves in the space. I have a question, a hypothetical question for you, or scenario for you. You are at some
Mm.
mythical place in Geneva presenting to the chief decision makers at Richemont, Swatch, and LVMH. They're all in one room. It's a great day. Your topic that you're sort of presenting on, you've got a PowerPoint, you've got it all going on, is to grow the category of women's watches at all price points. What would be your top line advice to these groups?
Okay, well, first of all, I would be so nervous in that
Uh
meeting.
huh.
Um,
You'll be fine.
I'm like
You'll
getting
kill it. You'll be
my
fine.
like palms are starting to sweat right now, even just thinking about it. What would my top line advice be?
Johann Rupert's there.
So, yes, this is a tough one. And this is why I think it's so hard for brands, because like there is no one size fits all answer. I don't think it's product related necessarily. I think some product could improve. I think it's good that they have choices, and I think there are women out there that want small watches, quartz watches, diamond watches. So it's nothing wrong with that. I think it truly is the way that they advertise, and I think it's changing the it to me. It just feels like a lot of the advertisements, I actually can't even think of advertisements for women. Like all I can think of is like the Tudor Lady Gaga campaign,
Mm.
which is great, but like that's another example. Like, is she selling watches? Like, does anyone know?
Lady Gaga,
I reckon she would be.
I think so.
I've got thoughts on that, but you know, um, we can
Yeah,
talk.
but
Go
do
on.
you have like, but in your opinion, like, do you think like do you think that she sells watches for
Yeah,
Tudor? Like,
Yes.
do you think people go out and they're like, oh wow, I saw Lady Gaga buying a watch, wearing a
Yeah, I think so.
Tudor, I want a Tudor.
I
Okay,
think she either
maybe it's a bad
sells the
example then.
watches or opens the brand to new categories. Like in terms
Yeah.
of like your traditional male marketing, Tudor's pretty tapped out. I mean, they've got Beckham and they're pretty popular in that space. So I think their growth needs to be in different areas. And I think people that find
Yeah.
Lady Gaga a inspirational figure will listen to what she has to say. So,
Okay. Fair enough. Fair
that's what
enough.
I thought. But anyway,
Uh, so,
this is your presentation.
yeah. So, yeah, this is my presentation.
Rolex is there
Oh,
too. I
you
forgot to say.
guys, you're really putting me in the hot seat on this one. Are you guys gonna like send this to them? Like you're gonna be like, oh, this is the pitch. Cars
Well,
on
Yeah, this is it.
cars,
Yeah.
cars in the hot seat. No. I guess my idea. I guess I would like to see. What I would like to see is different ad campaigns featuring real women. Um,
Yep.
I would like to see more. I actually think the way to reach women more is through influencer marketing. I think people are really over influencers, but at the same time, I think that they do reach a lot of people. And when I think about myself and how I learn about new products, it's all through Instagram, it's all through other women that I follow. I like their style. I like how they're dressed. I'm like, oh, that's a cool shirt. Who makes that? Tap on the photo. Oh, so and so. Okay, I don't know that. Click through it. Okay, I'll buy it. And so that's how I end up. That's my journey. That's my customer journey. And so I think that's something that not the Swiss, with the luxury watch brands struggle with. And this isn't a criticism. This is just an observation, is that they are still so focused on the fact that it's a hard to get product and it's a
Mm.
luxury product, and it is. But I think that the way that things have shifted over the past 10 years is that luxury can be readily available. You can go on Net-a-Porter and order, you can order an AP overnight if you want.
Mhm.
Like, there's all these ways that, like, you can shop and get things quickly. And I think that it would really be beneficial, to do that. Now, you have to have product to sell. So that's the problem, I think, that some of the brands have. Like, you can't do like a steel OP. You're never going to get that because everyone's going to want to buy it and it'll just cause even more demand. It'll be a whole drama. But I think, I really do think, like, that's how you would reach more women is, I know Vacheron has done a few product placements with influencers, um, and that's been really interesting, and I would be curious to know how that's gone for them. But I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see more kind of like cool fashion women that I know wearing these products, because it's a
I
fun
love that.
spot. I don't know.
Yeah, be interesting. And
It's nothing groundbreaking, so hopefully, so
oh,
so
Easy
when
sell.
you pitch this podcast to them, just tell them I need a
it's
little
going to
more
blow their
time. I
minds.
need a little more time to put my
We've
deck
never thought
together.
of this. Why? No one's
I'm
ever
sure
had
that
this
no,
idea.
that's the thing. It's like
They
they
probably
probably had
haven't.
this they probably had this conversation so many times, and I'm sure there are like junior members of the team who have been like just pitching this over and over and over again, and
Yeah,
everyone's like, "No, not this year. Next year. We'll do it next year."
they've they've only just sold them on getting Instagram accounts. they've
Yeah,
only
exactly. We have a
and
pandemic
ecom.
now. We can't do it.
We've been doing ecom last year. We can't. Yeah. Aside
Yeah.
from the candy pink, is there a problem with sort of those pinked and shrink watches? They seem to sell for brands, so why would they change the formula?
Uh, Wait. So, are you asking why they would change the formula, or
Yeah, is there a
why?
problem with it? Is there a problem with the pink
I,
and
I,
the shrinked
yeah, I
watches?
guess from the Swiss perspective, like this is how they've made women's watches. Why would they need to change? Like they've made smaller models of the men's
Yeah.
ones, and
So, I guess I don't mind a smaller version of a men's watch because realistically, my wrists are smaller, so I
Mm,
need a smaller watch. So, like, that makes sense. So, like, if you have the Royal Oak, for example, they have it now in 34, 37, 39, 41. That's a good lineup, and you can get it
nice.
all in steel. You don't have diamonds on all of them. And so I think that that's where I get stuck, is a lot of times when they shrink it and pink it, they put a quartz movement in it, they put diamonds on it, and then they charge like 5 times as much as the men's version with an
Mm.
automatic movement or a manual movement in steel. And you're like, well, wait, why would I don't want to spend $50,000 on that? Like, I just want to spend $15,000 on that one. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like it, that in itself eliminates a lot of purchasers as well. So I think the
True.
shrink it and pink it is okay in certain cases, pun intended,
Yeah.
but it's, did someone laugh at that or no?
Yeah,
Did that
it was
joke
one of
land?
those pity laughs, though. It was not a real. There was no genuine humor in it.
Okay, okay, okay. It's okay. It's okay. I didn't have time to laugh at my own joke, so next time. But I think the shrinking and pinking is fine in certain cases. However, I would prefer to see more advancement in, like, options. So less quartz, more automatic, that kind of thing. So just not kind of making it too frilly. But that's a style thing though. That's like my own
Hmm.
style. So I can't really speak for other people because some people
Well,
like that, and that's fine.
I think that sort of answers a question in a way. Like, don't just do that. Surely you can add another couple of SKUs to your product lineup without too much drama. Um,
Yeah.
Something you said, I think it might have been in the podcast, the Hodinkee Radio podcast that you did the other day with Stephen, and we'll link that up. Where you talked about wanting to see more, I think more women who were just chic in watch ads, and you sort of use some phrasing there around just wanting to sort of have a bit more of a fashion forward take on watch marketing and women's watches. without, passion watches, if you know what I mean. Which leads me to think to one of my sort of favorite features that I've seen in the Hodinkee magazine over the last few years, which was the Soho stories. That was a pretty wild group of people to assemble. How do you find them?
Okay. Okay, thank you for calling this out because I was worried that no one read that section except
That
for
was
like me
awesome.
and my mom. I was like so excited about that. And like I produced the whole thing and I was like so into it. It was like such a highlight of my career because I was like just like stunned that Helena Christensen was standing in front of me in a photo shoot. Like, couldn't
Yeah.
believe it. I was like, wait a second. I was like, she's a super model. And then you meet her, and like, it was who was on set? It was me, Gray, and Steven. And we were all just like, oh my God, like, she's a real supermodel. Like, she moves like a
No
supermodel.
shit.
She like ignores you like a supermodel. Like, she is like, oh my god, no, she was very nice, but like she was down. It was like this was business. So we worked with Kat Erlin, the photographer, on finding people for the shoot, and it was really wonderful. And I was so thrilled with how it came together because I really wanted it to be a mix of real people, and people that are real but also known. So it worked out really well, and I'm so glad you guys liked it. It was
Yeah,
honestly such
Madison
a
Blank was on
highlight.
there, right?
Yeah, she was. So she was
She's
on
awesome.
no, she was on a second issue. She was
The
in the
second issue.
next one. Um,
7.
Yes, and she was like, I think why I collect. She's amazing. She was actually supposed to be in the fashion suit, but there was a timing issue, so we got her into the next issue. But yeah, it was a mix of someone a woman in finance, a well-known plastic surgeon in New York, an entrepreneur, a chef. Hannah Bronfen was in it. She's like so lovely, and it really was just so fun, and it was really great. So I'm glad you guys read that. uh it was funny when we posted it. I like I was like waiting for people to be like, oh my god, Helena Christensen. And like no one commented about it, and we all were like, I guess people care more about the watches than they do about and I was like, yeah, I was like, that's how you know you're an enthusiast
Yeah.
publication.
I
I
think
was like, I was like, I'm never doing this again. It's like you guys are ungrateful.
don't you know who this is?
But no, but it was really
Um,
fun. So
I think that look at this. It's sort of we're laughing about it, but there's a serious undertone to it. You've got supermodels, sort of promoting fine watches. You've tried all these different things. How do you engage more women to meaningfully engage in this sort of enthusiast space? If Helena Christensen can't do it, what can?
that's a really good question.
Tell
You
us if you
know,
know,
can
please.
can I get can I get back to you on that one? No, I
I mean, you
I'm
don't have
trying
Please.
to
to
have
think.
a full answer,
No,
but just
so
I'm surely you've had some thoughts over the last week or so.
yeah, I think it's what I don't really know what the answer is. I've noticed that like there's like stuff on Clubhouse now, which I feel
Mhm.
very old trying to figure it out.
You just listen, I think. What about
That's
this?
what
What
I've
about this?
that's what I was that's what I've been told. But I'm like, wait, how do you find these things? Anyways, so I got to spend some time on Clubhouse. But I think
Yeah.
it's just, I think it's more. There's one Instagram account actually that's new that I really like called Dime Piece. I don't know if you follow
Yes.
her yet. Bryn is her name. She's awesome. I think that she does a really great job of connecting pop culture with watches. And I think that that's a really good way to connect women who are not necessarily aware of watches to watches. And it's kind of like, oh, that's cool. Like Rihanna has a watch on. And then you see
Hmm.
it in real life and you're like, oh, I've seen that watch before. Like Rihanna has that watch. Like I think that that's a really great way to like engage. Um,
Mhm.
so I think that's one solution. And I think it's just kind of like getting watches more into like pop culture and like media and Instagram and like on real people and like having stylists like actually place watches on celebrities and like all that stuff. Like I hate to say that like ambassadors work, but like in those kind of organic
Mm.
instances, like they do. Um, and so that might be a possible solution, but I'm gonna have to noodle on that one and get back. Should I do like a homework report after this and
Yeah, get
like
back to
send it
us.
to you
Yeah,
guys?
please.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, we'll link up Dime Piece, but why don't what are some other women, females in the watch enthusiast space that we should be engaging with? We've got mentioned Jenny L and Dime Piece, but who else is there that you think
Well, I love
we
10
should
and
shine a light
2.
on? Yep.
I love 10 and 2. Suzanne Wong, forever and always.
Mhm.
She's an OG. She's great. And so and Letitia Hershey is also doing a lot of stuff on like highlighting women in watches and watches for women. So there's a lot of people out there kind of talking about it. So it's really great, and I feel very optimistic about the future conversations. And I think one of my hopes with that piece that I wrote last week was that at least it would be shared with women, right, that are like tangentially connected to watches by
Hmm.
our readers. And so I did get a lot of emails and feedback and notes and things saying that that was in fact the case, that they did share it with their wife or their girlfriend or their mom or their sister or their friends. And so that really made me very happy to hear. So you know
Yeah,
I
awesome.
think this is good.
Well,
So
this has been a great discussion. I think we can all wipe our palms and take a breath, and let's move on to the next topic, which we want to talk about Cara and watches. We want to hear the story of how you got into watches in the first place, with maybe a little bit of detail. What was your first timepiece, perhaps?
okay. Well, the very first time I noticed, well, okay. So there's like many different like prongs of like my interest in watches. So like I remember my dad bought my mom a watch when I was like 7, and I went with him to pick it out, and it was like this like little gold bracelet watch, like a Bulgari Parentesi in the 90s. It was like burned on my brain. I like remembered it so well. And I actually mentioned it recently. She like lost it golfing. It was very sad. Anyways, but the first watch I also remember seeing as like a teenager was the Cartier Tank Francaise, and I was obsessed with it. And I was like, one day I'm gonna get this watch. This is the watch I want. Like, this is what I want. And so I actually ended up getting it for a graduation gift, and that was my first watch. That watch was stolen from a dressing room,
Ouch.
which was sad. Um, Long story short, took it off, put it down in what I thought was my purse, wasn't my purse, left, realized I didn't have it, came back, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, we haven't seen it." And I was like, "Can you look for it?" And they're like, "No." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I was like too young to like know what to do. And I was just like, "Oh my god." So that was that was sad. But that was kind of my first foray into it. But when I got really into it was when I was interning at Christie's in London after college, and I worked in the house sales department, and that was where we would go to like English estates, and they would sell the entire contents of the home, and it was like
Mm.
really cool. And I would like go tag all this like weird antique stuff. um and I would, there's like a catalog closet. And I'll probably get blacklisted from ever working at Christie's again when they hear this, but I would like go and like borrow the watch catalogs. So I have this like stash of like 2005 Christie's watch catalogs with like 3448s on the cover, and they're like only cost like, the white gold one is like $90,000, and like it's just like really kind of crazy to see how the prices have all changed over time. But it's amazing because all the vintage watches that are for sale in the catalogs are still the same vintage watches that are for sale now. So
Uh,
like nothing has changed but the price. So that was kind of like when I like started kind of like digging into it. And then fast forward about 4 years later, is when I applied for a job in the watch department at Sotheby's, while I was a temp there. And that's when I learned what a perpetual calendar was. Couldn't believe it. Oh my God, what do you mean it accounts for a leap year? That doesn't make any sense. And it was kind of game over after that. So that's how I fell into it. I really did just fall into it. So I feel very, very lucky that that happened.
Hashtag blessed.
Yes,
These days,
exactly.
if I have a quick scroll through your Instagram, I think I might be seeing more AP than sort of any other brand represented. What do you like about Audemars Piguet?
So one, it's a very comfortable watch. Two, I like the brushing on the case and all the links. It reminds me, well, it's like satin, but it actually is very like silky to like wear, and I find that very enjoyable. I love bracelets. I do not like straps. I have
Mm.
tried to like straps. I just can't. I can't do it. There's something about a
Except
bracelet
the
that I
Hodinkee
just
straps, right?
well, I promote those in the sense that I think they're great straps, but for me on a day to day, I like the security of a bracelet. I also like the shine. Let's get real.
Just
It's
feels
kind of
better.
yeah, it just like it's just shiny and like nice, and I just like it.
Mm.
So with the AP, I think the design's really cool. The movement's beautiful. It's like it's a luxury sports watch. Like it truly is. Like, and I think that I love that juxtaposition. I like juxtapositions or contradiction. What's the word? Is it juxtaposition?
Something like that.
Something
Well,
like that.
aside from AP, you've been a long time proponent of the gem set pieces. Uh, two questions: if you could pinch one piece from Eric Koo, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Probably that original
Mm.
rainbow. Have you seen that?
Is it the white gold one he has, or I
It's
don't
like
know? He's got so many.
he has like a date just from the
Oh yeah, yeah.
80s. And it's
Oh,
like the very first rainbow set Rolex. It's
interesting.
crazy. So I'll
You're a
have to
big
find
fan of the
I could
rainbow, aren't you?
yeah, I do love the rainbow. I can't help it. I love it so much. I still love it
Would-
after all these years, 2 years since the rose gold one came out, but I can't forget it.
Different question then. Uh, Rainbow has been apparently discontinued in 2020. I think it was the last year of the Rose Gold. What do you think we'll see from the novelty department at Rolex in 2021?
Oh, so I actually wonder if they're not going to do a super big novelty because a lot of their gem set watches um, are often released under the radar, like a lot of the subs that they do and the GMTs with like the blue sapphires and things like that. They're so beautiful. So, I mean, as you guys know, like those are not like publicly like released at
Hmm.
Basel,
Mhm.
RIP. But oh my god, how much do you miss Basel? I miss Basel so much. We got to talk about that next.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the next thing, so for this year, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't do anything with gems just because of the state of post COVID and like all that stuff. I wonder if they're holding back for next year. What do you think?
Mm. Well, they did the release last year, which was
Pretty meaty.
reasonably big. It was pretty meaty, and there was a bit happening. Obviously, everyone's talking about the new, the Explorer anniversary. But I think, as you say, they don't really promote the gem set pieces too heavily.
Gemset
So,
Explorer, Rainbow
and then
Explorer, calling it now.
Rainbow Explorer,
Right.
people would
Oh my god, can you
people would
imagine?
buy that.
People would
People would
buy
still
that.
buy it.
Of course they
It's
would.
crazy though, because
Stephen Pulverid's dream watch.
do you think? Yeah, as we said, like Eric Kuzga, got the original 1980s rainbow. Before it was rose gold, it was white gold. The sort of the gem setting's been around for a long, long time. Do you think the turning point in terms of like popularity and people actually wearing them, not just kind of collecting them and putting them in a big safe, was the rose gold? Like it seemed like no one really, really cared about gem set Rolex, and then everyone cared, and they're all incredibly desirable.
Yeah, I've thought about this. I've thought about this a lot. So I think, the Italian vintage dealers always collected them. They always have them, even the new ones. John Mayer has them. And I think in 2018, when they came out with the rose gold one. I think they really nailed the design with the indexes. I think that was a big game changer for a lot of people. But
Hmm.
B, I think we were kind of like at this like height, and it's weird because I always think about like watches and like fashion um in relation to like the economy and like what's happening in the world. And so, obviously last year was like a down year. So like things were much more subdued. People were releasing crazy stuff. Same with this year. I think it's just an extension of last year. And I almost
Hmm.
think that like the rose gold Rolex was kind of like this like pinnacle of watch craziness. And I think everyone kind of got tired of like steel tool watches
Mm,
and like that's it, you know what I mean? And I think that the rainbow was just like something so unexpected. Even though it was already around, I think people just kind of start. You also have to remember, like, when the yellow gold and the gold one came out, like, I don't think that there were that many like watch blogs or like social media, like all that. Like, I'm just trying to, like, it wasn't like the height of like
Mm.
watch talk. And in 2018, like, that was when that was pretty major. I mean, like, everybody, there were tons of publications out there. There's tons of Instagram. Everybody's sharing stuff. Everybody's posting stuff. So I think that it kind of just like really took off that way. Celebrity owners also like didn't hurt, so I
mm.
think that contributed. But I do think it kind of was an antidote to a lot of more understated pieces that people were used to talk about. And that, at least that's how I view it. And I think that's why I like it so much, because it was like, oh, this is like so weird. Like, this is a weird thing that doesn't make sense, but like, I love it, you know.
Yeah.
So that's how I think about
Absolutely,
that.
and I think that's a really sort of good point about the excitement of Basel 2018. I think that was um, whether we knew it or not, that was sort of the beginning. Well, not the beginning and the end of the end. Obviously, that
Hmm.
culminated in where we are now. And I've just got to, again, speaking about Rolex, shout out to Rolex's I don't know what you call it, gifting department, whoever, who sent out the Basel World press gifts that said Basel World 2020 on them.
Oh
Did you get one of those? Are you
no.
familiar with? Yeah, I got a little thing
It was a
from.
keychain, right?
Yeah, like a little anchor, like a little Submariner anchor that sort of came out with the new releases, like, thank you for attending our web conference, whatever it was. And it said
Oh
Basel
my,
World
that's
2020 on it.
adorable.
It's so
Oh
savage.
my god. Oh my god. Do you
Such a
think that
flex.
was like a do you think that was on of course it was on purpose. Rolex doesn't do
Oh,
anything
yeah.
Yeah.
unintentionally. I was just going to ask that, and I was like, I will correct myself before I finish that thought.
So,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
I think the other people, they're certainly around. You've probably got a stack of them somewhere in the cupboard at Hodinkee. Go get one. They're great.
Yeah, I'm sure Jack has all of them or something. I'll
He's
send him a Slack.
popping them on eBay
They're on eBay for
slowly.
$2,000 a keychain.
You-
But
oh
I think this
god,
is, I
I
mean,
know. I feel bad about Basel.
yeah.
Sorry,
So,
go ahead. I
no,
cut
no,
you
no.
off.
Talk to us about Basel.
I mean, I just miss it.
Mm.
I mean, maybe I miss people in general because I like rarely leave my house, but like, I miss Basel. I miss all the releases. I miss like seeing people in the industry that you don't normally see. Like,
The
I miss
energy.
yeah, like, oh God. I even miss that, sausage thing outside. I mean, it's horrible after like 5 days, but like, I miss it. I miss it. It's kind of sad when you think about it, that it's like really like it's over, you know? It's weird.
Well, yeah, we've got an email this morning to put a placeholder in my calendar for a week for the upcoming watches and wonders. So that's going to
Yeah.
be an interesting pivot. The week long digital extravaganza. It's going to be interesting to see. If LVMH Watch Week was anything to go by, it'll be really interesting first. Couple of days, and then I'll be tuned
Fatigued.
out and just
Yeah.
logged on, but not at my computer for the rest of the week. But cautious that we've got to talk to you about a little bit more about work. It's been a very exciting morning and evening for yourself. Felix and I woke up to the news that Hodinkee has acquired Crown and Caliber. So what we want to do is hear a little bit about that. I'm sure you're involved given your role, but also talk a little bit more about, the special projects that you've done and that you have got coming up at Hodinkee. My first question is the Mayer Hodinkee G-Shock. Are you sure they're all sold out?
Yeah. I
Like how
I'm
how
sad.
sure?
I'm really sad to
Like
say
sure?
that I'm like fairly positive they're all sold out. I'll go down to the office tomorrow to make sure
Yeah.
that there are none like hiding out, but yes, they are all sold out. That was really crazy. That was crazy. That was I couldn't even get the Instagram post up. Like I was like trying to post and I just like watched the watches just deplete from our Shopify account and I just like froze on the couch because we're all remote. So I was just like, wait,
Why
what?
bother?
I was I like texted Ashley and I was like, did that really, is there a problem? Like, did it break? And she was like, no, we just sold them. I was like, oh my
No, we're
God.
just very
So
good at what we
anyway,
do.
so that was, no, it wasn't even that. It's like, I mean, anything John touches, like I think it was such a big deal because everybody loves his I mean, everybody loves John.
Mm,
Everybody loves his
yeah.
talking watches. He's a real watch guy, and I think in a way, and I felt this way when because I bought one, and I was like, wow, it's cool because I feel like I'm collecting with John Mayer. You know what I mean? Because like I know he has one, and so I have one, and so we have the same watch, and like that's kind of cool. So I think that I think I think that was really what it was. And he was a great partner and he was so fun and like he's very creative and want to do wacky stuff and I think that it was just a kind of a breath of fresh air in my opinion for our
Absolutely. I think
launches that year.
yeah. So speaking of your launches, and maybe, the Mayer one stands out in recent memory, I do want to ask though, what are special projects? What does
Oh,
that
so
mean?
I asked the same thing when I was given that title because I didn't know that I thought it was like a made up job.
Mhm.
I basically, like this is real insidery, but I basically was like, hey, I love writing, but I want to be more involved on the business side and like the commercial side. And so
Sure.
we kind of came up with this title to accommodate that, and limited edition falls under that. And you can't really be like manager of limited editions like that. That's not like that's only a Hodinkee specific job, right? So like it's not a real
Yeah.
job outside. So the funny thing is like a month after I got the title, I met someone at Tag that was the director of special projects, and I was like, oh my God. It's like we have the
Oh,
similar-ish job. So it's a real job. I'm confirmed. But it basically so before lockdown, I was responsible for all of our pop-ups. H10,
mhm.
I put that together with help,
Okay.
obviously, but like that was my project. So like all those kind of like one-off things fell under my purview. So it's honestly I feel #blessed. Like it's been so fun and it's been so stressful also. But it's really neat. And so we did an Omega pop up with them. God, when was that? Like end of 2019.
Yeah.
So that also kind of fell under my umbrella. And yeah, it's been really, really fun. So
So
that is what special projects are.
so it's basically the best job ever by the sounds of things.
It's not it's not too bad. It's not too bad.
Oh,
I'll have to
that's
say
awesome.
that.
So, well, we've talked about when you started at Hodinkee and sort of, one of the first sort of 5 full-time employees, smaller team. Yesterday it was sort of a global empire of sort of 50 plus, 50 or 60 people. And today it's
Even
much
more.
more than that with this new acquisition. What's been, good about your sort of personal experience of being part of that massive scale up, and maybe what's been challenging?
Yeah, so I think, it was difficult for me at first because I went from a super corporate structure at Sotheby's to a
Hmm.
super small and loose structure with only 4 people. And it kind of was a shock to me that you could have an idea and then say it out loud. And, Ben would be like, great, you can do that, just do it. and then you have to figure out how to do it. And I think that learning that skill set and figuring out how to implement ideas has been both the most challenging and the most rewarding part of growing with a company. Um, because it teaches you that A, anything's possible. No is never the answer. And even when you want it to be sometimes. And B, you can do anything. Like you can really, if you put your mind to it, you can make it happen. Um, and that's been really, really fulfilling. I'm a very creative person and I have a lot of weird ideas. I would say 99% of them do not stick, but like that 1%, like it's always exciting to see them come to life. So it's been really fun. It's been really fun. And you also become a generalist as well. So like you can do lots of different things. You can write, you can market, you can do social, you can do that. So working in a small
Useful.
company like that really it's great. I highly recommend it. But it's not for the faint of heart.
Hodinkee limited edition, though they have all frequently sold out. I just want to know, are there any particular ones that you've worked on that you've, wished you could maybe keep, or that were hard to see go, or that you were particularly proud of?
So the one I wish I had bought is the Tag Skipper.
Oh,
Mm.
you and me both.
I real bumskis on that one. I still think about that watch and I'm like, what were you thinking? I remember being like, oh, maybe I should get it, but it's like, it's just like a little too big for me. I'll never wear it. It's too big for me. And like, what? That's not true. Like, it's not true. I could have worn it. It would have been fine. So I'm disappointed in that one. Um, that one, as far as a product is concerned, I'm sad that I missed out on. As far as like the launch strategies and kind of different projects, Groenfeld was one that I was really proud of.
Mhm.
Just working with those guys was so great, and they are so funny and they're so good at what they do, and the product was so beautiful. And just kind of like shining the light on an independent was really, I think, um, meaningful and just interesting and different. Um, and then honestly, the John Mayer launch was my favorite campaign that we did. Not only because he kind of like came up with his own little ditty that was, I'm not kidding, stuck in my head for like 2 months. Um, and but also the assets were different. The page looked like an 80s advertisement. Like it was really just kind of very different from what we normally do,
Mm.
and we had a lot of fun designing that. Ian, our designer, and John Peabody, who is our producer for all of our sponsor content, and now he works on the campaigns with me. um,
Mm.
we were all really proud of that one, and there was a lot of work that went into it, and it turned out really cool, I thought. So it just felt fresh. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you've just sort of mentioned it a few times, but how long do these sort of limited edition special projects typically take? Like, there must be so much that we don't see, and sort of you kind of said it with the travel clock, like you had it ready to go. You had, I can only imagine a couple $100,000 worth of stock that you can't just sit on forever. So what's involved with with these special projects roughly, and what's sort of like the timeline? Like, it's not just like, hey, tag, let's do this skipper in a month's time. I imagine
yeah,
there's
yeah.
Or
I
is
wish it
it?
would only take a
a lot.
month.
Swap the dial, yeah.
Yeah, oh god, I wish. No, well, I mean, it depends on who you're working with, right? So like
Mm.
some manufacturers don't take 9 months, others take 2 years. So it really kind of just depends. So it basically we start working about a year and a half in advance. Um, we go to the brands with designs that we really like. Then we kind of go back and forth, agree on one, and then they put it into production. It kind of goes quiet for a little bit, and then about 2 or 3 months beforehand, we'll get a sample, and we'll hit the ground running, shoot the campaign, design the page, get it approved, build it out, launch it. So it really does take anywhere from a year and a half to 9 months. So It's an ongoing
Wow.
thing. Like, we're planning now for 2022,
Yeah,
and
nice.
2023. So
So we can get the jump on the
yeah,
2021
exactly. I thought I would just run down
releases.
everything that we're doing this year, on this podcast, if that's
Yeah,
cool with
just
you
go.
guys.
Just yep. Yeah, that's fine. But seriously, is
Actually,
there anything? Yeah,
we do have an
yeah.
You
announcement
got one coming up,
tomorrow.
right?
You
Yeah,
can
we
tell
Oh,
we're
this
not
do.
one.
publishing it
I mean,
tomorrow.
we can
When
keep a
is this
secret.
going live?
No,
Couple
probably
of
next
weeks.
month, March.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, the 23rd is when we're launching.
Okay, we've got time.
23rd
Yeah,
of
Is
Feb
this
get
or
ready.
the
March.
one we've seen teasers for? The if this color was a watch?
Yeah, that's Daisy. That's our new
Ooh,
social media manager or audience engagement manager. That's her
it's
title.
working. You got
I'm
to tell
It's
us.
engaged.
cool. Are you engaged? Okay, good. I'll tell
Yeah.
her that. That's exciting.
You're going to tell us what the color of a watch is or whatever it
We'll just
is?
keep being awkward and silent
Well,
until you
I
do.
don't
Yeah.
know. I think you guys could probably guess, but right?
No, I can't.
You can't guess?
Because if I guess wrong, people are going to laugh at me because I'm not an expert on watches,
Oh, okay.
and
Well,
that's what
how
stresses
about
me
this?
out.
Tuesday you'll see.
Fuck, you're good.
Mate,
Fuck, you're good.
you've done this before, haven't you?
That director of special projects titles, it's coming.
This is
I
almost
can
as
see
good
it.
as asking the Rolex, executives, "Oh, what are we seeing this year?" And they're like, "Oh, I don't know.
We have not seen.
Oh, we do not know."
You are good. You're very good.
You're good, but no fun. And I'm very aware that we've sort
Wow.
of we've taken up a lot of your time already. But I just sort of wanted to. Obviously, you're not going to tell us about your special projects. That's disappointing. But maybe you can tell us what we can expect with your new column. What's that all about? Are you going to be setting fire to the internet every other week?
Oh, well,
Ooh.
okay. So I would love to set fire to the internet every week, but it's so basically my column, it's monthly and it's going to be on the industry. So it's not always going to be as spicy as the last one.
Mm,
However, I do want to kind of like talk a little bit more about diversity within the industry, and who's leading companies, and kind of talk about different niche, different parts of the industry that people might not know about. So that is going to be my monthly column. So it might be juicy. I don't know. I could be like a gossip column. We'll see.
Okay. All right.
wow,
We're here
that's
for it. We're here
I'm there
for
for
it.
that.
Except I don't want to get in trouble with the watch brands. That's the thing. I like don't want the
a
Sterns to come after
very a
me. So I
very
have
soft
to be
gossip
careful.
column.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
How's Hodinkee's
I
legal
like
department
I
looking at the moment?
I did pitch a couple ideas, and
Strong.
they're like, maybe we reel this one back a little bit. And I was like, oh, okay.
Hmm.
It's like maybe a little too scandalous. Got
And
it.
that was the last time anyone ever saw Cara. Uh, well, of course, there's the partnerships and collaborations are at the core of your role. I want you to. I'm going to put a challenge or a question to you. What's the dream brand that you want to collaborate with that you haven't already?
Oh, Cartier, for sure.
Do
Oh,
they
what
do
would you do?
collabs? Is it a possibility or
No,
okay?
Not yet.
not yet.
Not yet. Not
Not
yet.
yet. Well,
You
I
up,
yeah,
Cartier?
I love Cartier. They're so. I want to
What
do a
would you do?
tank. I want to do like
Okay.
a cool tank. You know, I don't know. Get that thing out there. Do something special. I know they could do it.
Oh yeah.
They do unique pieces, so I know they can do it. But it's just a matter of convincing them to do it. So we'll see. Maybe 2022 is my year.
2022. Just do a unique piece and just do like I don't know 200 of the same unique
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah,
Just change the
easy,
order
right? I
process.
hear
Like
making
Done.
watches is so easy.
everyone that buys it
Done.
just has
And
to submit like a unique piece request to Cartier individually.
Yeah,
the exact same specs.
yeah.
Yeah. Here you go, guys. Just email. Here's the template. Hodinkee engraved on the case back, maybe. Fine.
Change the number. That's what makes it unique.
Honestly, I think that would be so fun is to like have people kind of like what Ressens did, like have people
Yeah.
submit their like dream designs for a certain brand. I think that would be, or like when Tag did the like pick your favorite and we'll make
Oh,
it.
the Ortavia Cup.
Yeah, that was
Yeah, that's pretty
fun.
cool.
Yeah, it was good.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a good way to engage with people. Well, Cara, thank you so much for coming on. What we like to do to wrap a show is we ask for recommendations. Maybe you've been listening to, watching, eating, I don't know, doing something that you think that
Drinking.
is worth giving a shout out. But we'd love to hear it before we say goodbye.
Oh, okay. What have I been up to? Not much. I watch a lot of Law and Order, if I'm being totally honest.
Nice, Mariska.
What would they recommend? I feel like it got to be a problem actually. It's on every day in America. Like it's on every single day on a different channel. And I know all the different channels where they have the marathons on, so I
You got
just
the
switch.
times lined up?
Yeah. And I know, like, for example, on Mondays, there's no Law and Order, not on any channel. And so, like, Mondays are always the
It's a
saddest night
dark
because I
day.
can't turn on.
That's when the
Yeah,
special
it's
projects get done.
exactly. That's when I get all my work done. Well, let's see. I've been cooking. I love to cook. It's something I'm really into just because I find it personally very satisfying, and I got really fed up with takeout.
Mhm.
So my recommendation is to everyone should buy or at least look up Marcella Hazan's cookbook. She's an Italian cook, kind of like the Julia Child of Italian food, in the
Mhm.
US at least. And so she makes a wonderful bolognese. It's great for winter time. Highly recommend. And
Mhm.
then I have a couple of TV shows that came out last year. They're not new, but I really recommend Ted Lasso if you
Oh,
want to smile.
yes.
Did you guys watch that?
So
Every
good.
other week it comes up.
Oh,
I still haven't
you'll
done
be
it.
glad to know Horror
God,
Loop
it
also
is.
recommended Ted Lasso, one of his favorites.
Oh, it is so good. I It
So
makes
wholesome.
you so happy. Like it's so good, and it's actually really like low key, very funny.
Mm,
And then guys, Emily in Paris, come on,
really?
all the
Oh,
haters be damned.
I'm
It
not
was a
with you on that
good
one.
show.
No, fight and talk.
All right, so Bolognese and Law and Order, those are my recs then. But yeah,
Nice,
Yeah,
so
good
nice.
hopefully
work on
those were good
Mondays.
ones. I'm
They're all good.
I need to get into reading. Jesus Christ.
No, you don't.
We
But
can
yeah,
we can give you some good book recommendations from some Australian authors, perhaps.
yeah, I love that.
We'll send them over. All right. Well, Cara, thank you so much for joining Felix and I. It's been a fantastic marathon chat. We appreciate your time and your candor with the answers and your enthusiasm and honesty. It's been an absolute treat for us both.
Thank you guys. This has been so fun. A great way to spend my afternoon, I will admit. I'll be
Oh,
back. Have me back anytime. This was great.
yeah, sure.
It's so
Well,
Oh,
much
we
fun.
definitely will.
Oh, Felix, that was quite the chat. Cara was very generous with her time, especially considering the time zone, and we'll have to take her up on her offer to come back on OT the podcast. But as always, thank you to our sponsors. This week it is Tag Hoya, and of course, thank you to Major Tom Media for pulling the whole show together.
making it happen.
If you want to email Felix and Andy, otthepodcast@gmail.com. Felix, what is our Instagram handle?
It's a good one. We got a good one. We got ot.podcast. Not
Mental blank.
ot.pod.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
You got something to be, Andy?
See you guys. Yeah, I'm in a rush.
All right.